Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. It's Friday. You know what that means.
Front Office Friday! Like 2 weeks till preseason edition.
That's right. It is. Today is 2 weeks until preseason gets going. I can't wait to see everybody back on the floor finally, because we're going to get, Keith, in the next week or so, we're going to start hearing the 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. I'm in the best shape of my life. Everybody has the same record. We're really optimistic. We love the moves that we made over the summer. If we're the Lakers, it's I love the moves we didn't make over the summer. How rested Rob Pelinka is now. But in any event, we're going to start hearing all the hype, but they don't actually get on the floor for a couple of weeks. So we'll see actually preseason games. And even then, how much can you take away from preseason? Then we've got the regular season starting up October 22nd. But the most important thing is it's almost here. It's almost here. It's been a long summer. It's been a cruel summer, but it's almost over. The NBA season is almost back, and I am so excited.
Cruel summer, man. I thought you were going to go into a full Taylor Swift like medley of puns there, but alas, no. We didn't.
Is Cruel Summer a Taylor Swift song?
Come on, bro.
Seriously?
Come on, bro. Come on, Trevor.
I was going back. I was going Bananarama.
No, come on. Cruel Summer. Yeah, Taylor Swift. Yeah, without a doubt.
That's a Taylor Swift song.
Yeah.
Is it a remake of the Bananarama?
No,
is she covering Bananarama, or is it her own song?
No, I don't think so.
I don't know these things. My daughter is 8.
Yeah.
I don't know these
things.
things.
Man, but turn on the radio once in a while.
I listen to podcasts. Come on.
Yeah, podcasts and 80s rock.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, for the rare time, I feel like the cool hip young guy on the show. So I'll take it, man. Throw out some more.
It's not on top of that, like it's not my style of music anyways. Sure. I wouldn't, so it's the combination of things. But yes, absolutely. I am outdated. 100%. There's no question. I have come to terms with that. I have accepted that. And I guess I'm just missing out on the Taylor Swift Cruel Summer version. I legitimately did not know that was a song that she sings. I was making an 80s reference there.
Yeah, no, it's I've come around on Taylor Swift. I've listened to so much of it now that I enjoy it. It doesn't, no longer like it used to. I not like it, but I like her older stuff more. When it was a little more poppy, a little more poppy and less ballady. Ballads don't work when you're driving. Like they're not. Now my daughter says, because she knows all these girls who have their license now that she's in high school and all that. Every once in a while, you need a ballad to just drive around in the car and cry, which is apparently a thing teenage girls do. I don't know. We did not do that as teenage boys, so I don't know. But
that doesn't sound safe. Thing. That sounds like obscured vision to me.
Yeah. Well, I think you probably drive to Starbucks, get a drink, pull in the parking lot, and put on some sad music and cry about that. Who knows what? I don't know.
So it's responsible car crying, is what you're saying?
I guess. I don't know. I'll find out. I'll let you know in a few years when I'm living in that world.
Oh yeah. Fun times.
Welcome to what is ostensibly a basketball show.
That's right. We occasionally talk about
we do have basketball to talk
Taylor
about.
Swift. We make 80s references, and then every now and then when we find time, we talk basketball. I guess, and we do actually have a transaction to get into here, Keith. We got the news this morning that Joel Embiid is getting an extension done with the Philadelphia 76ers. 3-year deal for Embiid, $193 million extension. I can see, because you guys are always on top of things at Spot Track, it's already in on the Spot Track books here.
Yep.
I see the purple, as I recall, that means estimated number. That's
Correct.
What you guys believe it's going to be. And then is the word indeed that there's a player option on the final year of this?
Yes. Yeah, that was in the reporting that there's a player option on that final year. So essentially what Embiid did was he tacked on 2 more guaranteed years to his contract. So he was already under contract with 24, 25, 25, 26. Then he had a player option for 26, 27, wipes that out. declines that, signs the 3-year extension. That's the max he's eligible to sign. Adds 2 more guaranteed years. That is the max that we project for those 2 years. And then it goes to 28, 29 as a new player option on the end of that.
So Joel Embiid will turn 30 this next year, next spring, or I'm sorry, 31 next spring. Do you think this is a wise gamble? Particularly, I'm eyeing that player option at the end of this deal that'll pay him almost $70 million. Is this a wise decision for the 76ers? Is Embiid just that because he's won an MVP and he's a top tier superstar in the NBA, this is still, you're going to give him this deal, whatever he wants, you're just going to fork it over? Or should the 76ers have been a bit more hesitant looking at that player option for that final year?
Now, once you locked into the money for Paul George, might as well do it for Embiid too. Lock up your 3-man core. There is no world, barring a career-ending injury, where you wouldn't be able to trade one of those guys if you needed to. Even if Embiid, let's say Embiid misses all of a season in the course of this deal and has a year or 2 left, somebody's going to trade for him, believing, hey, we'll get him healthier. We only need him for 60 games and 20 minutes a night, and that's enough, and those kind of things. So I think they'll, we'll be fine. They'll be in good shape. I think having Embiid and George and this sort of long-term investment in both guys, I'm gonna say I don't know that either guy will be eligible for postseason awards moving forward with the
In
current
terms of games
65 game played marker, only because I think they're more concerned. We need them in April, May, and June. They don't really need to win all NBA and win MVPs. We're trying to win a title. Embiid, in his Instagram post where he kind of broke his own news that he re-signed with Philly, he put in there like it's time to go win a championship. That's like the thing we haven't done yet. Like, let's go. So I think they're going to be very cautious with these two guys, make sure to do everything they can. Now, to some extent, that doesn't always work, right? We saw that with the Clippers. They were very cautious with Kawhi and Paul George and then got to the end and it wasn't there. So I think we're in a spot where it is, let's kind of see where this goes with this. But yeah, once you locked into Paul George, might as well lock into Embiid as well and go forward. And Maxey is, that's a fine deal. He's he'll be an all-star level guy, was already. I would be kind of surprised if he doesn't make an all-star team at least 3 out of the 5 years, maybe even 4 or 5 of the 5 years.
And we've talked a lot about how with the new CBA, you're going to see more teams pursue the 2-star build and that it makes it more difficult for your third guy to get that true max money. Part of the reason why Philadelphia can do this, part of it is Philly's just saying, screw it, we're going to go for it. But also part of it is he's a lower level max. You see his max money is not the same as Embiid's max money because of the years of service. So that's part of what allows the 76ers to be able to do this, to have effectively 3 maxes here. But, Keith, I was just looking back because I look at the final year of that deal and I'm like, man, he's almost making $70 million in the final year. It doesn't feel like it was all that long ago that the salary cap was $70 million.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It was 2015, 2016 when the salary cap, so less than 10 years ago, the cap was $70 million. Joel Embiid's contract in the final year of this deal will be just about $70 million.
Yep. Yeah, that $70 million, that was the last year of kind of normal growth. Then we had the big spike in 2016 where it jumped up to 94, if I remember correctly, in that range somewhere. In that range 94. Around 94 million. Yeah. So 94 million. And then from there, it's kind of grown steadily. Pandemic years, they flattened it out, but that was a whole different thing. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, we're a decade ago, he would have been making almost the entire salary cap. Like,
wow.
That's again, these are all the reasons why they got billions of dollars in the TV contract, why franchises are going for $4 to $5 to $6 billion, why we're going to have expansion. The league's in great shape. It's really probably never been in better shape in the entirety of the NBA's existence. So yeah, seeing a couple comments in the chat of like, what's Philly going to do when guys get hurt? Yeah, I mean, I get it. Building out depth, a little difficult. I think they did a pretty good job this offseason, getting like Andre Drummond and Caleb Martin, re-signing Kelly Oubre, turning KJ Martin into a basically a walking trade exception. And then their minimum guys like Eric Gordon, Reggie Jackson, Kyle Lowry, Yabusele, all pretty good stuff. So I think, they're in pretty decent shape here to, kind of keep it moving forward. You eventually may need to trade somebody to fill out some depth, but at least for the next year or two, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah. And so this team, we talked about it yesterday. We were doing our one big question. They're all about winning the championship and doing what they can to get it. And look, if you could say, well, what's going to happen to this team's cap sheet and stuff if Embiid is injured or Paul George is injured or whatever? That's true of a lot of teams. What if just about it? Look, if the Warriors lose Steph Curry, they're not going anywhere, right? I mean, this is going to be true of just about everybody. If Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is out for the Thunder, they're not going anywhere. We saw what happens to the Grizzlies when John Morant is out. It's going to be true of everybody. Now, you could say Joel Embiid and Paul George have a longer and larger history of injuries, and that's certainly fair. But I mean, the Sixers are saying we've got talent, we're going to go for it, and I don't blame them. I mean, you put Embiid, George, and Maxey together, there's the top end ceiling for this team to make it to the finals. I would project them to, but the ceiling is there.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's I mean, this team is really good. Or at least should be really good. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I think they're kind of third for me in the East. I obviously trust the Celtics and the Knicks both a little bit more because I just trust them to be a little healthier than Philly, but I've got Philly right there. We're right behind those teams. We'll go to this question because it's a good one. Mamadou Kanute, I think. Apologize if I butchered that. Says, is the new CBA going to affect this Philly team? Yeah, to some extent. Anybody who's carrying 3 max contracts, you're going to be in a spot where if that is 90% of your salary cap with those three guys on max deals, you're gonna have some work to do to build out your roster around them. So that's gonna take some work to get that done. But they're in a good place because they've got some guys already. And by the time they're really expensive, like when this new Embiid extension kicks in, Kelly Oubre will be a free agent, but they'll have his bird rights. They'll have Andre Drummond's early bird rights. So they'll be in a position to retain those guys on contracts if they want to and need to with that, that's big. It's the challenge with the Suns was the Suns loaded up with the really expensive guys, then had to go all minimum contracts for last year. And then they didn't have rights on those guys. Now, most of those guys didn't pop and they didn't really want or need them, so that becomes a thing. But yeah, I mean they'll be okay. I also why I reference we'll come back to B's question here in a second.
Yeah,
but there was a guy he played at Auburn. I can't think of his last name now, but his name was Mamadou. And every time he blocked a shot, the student section would say, "Nobody packs your lunch like your mama do." And
that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, right.
I like that.
I thought that was good. Yeah,
I like that. This question came in and said, why do people trust the Knicks? You said you trust the Knicks more than the 76ers. Why do people trust the Knicks to be healthy when half their team was injured? I don't think you're saying you trust the Knicks more health-wise. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm looking at it as I trust if the 76ers are healthy and the Knicks are healthy, I trust the Knicks more to be that dangerous team. Like I would pick the Knicks over the 76ers in a 7-game series if both teams were healthy. That's the way I see it. Am I fully trusting that both teams are going to stay healthy? No, both teams have injury concerns, but let's assume in an ideal world, both squads are healthy. I would pick the Knicks over the 76ers. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. The Knicks do not have a history of year over year of injuries like Joel Embiid and Paul George do. OG Anunoby's probably the closest. He has not always been the most healthy guy, but a couple of his things were really freak things. Like he had appendicitis one year. Well, guess what? That's not going to happen again. So that's I mean, if it does, that makes him a medical marvel doesn't feel like the right term because it's not a good thing, but a medical curiosity at the least. So yeah, those are the things why I'm less worried about their injuries. It's fair. I mean, they definitely were, losing guys left and right, but they don't have the history of their guys, and they just have more depth. They have more guys. I feel like they can go to them. Philly can do, even if I think Philly has done pretty well building out their depth.
Well, and you think about it. So Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, with Philly, you're relying on how many of Eric Gordon, Reggie Jackson, Kyle Lowry are going to be ready to go at any given time, healthy and productive, right? We don't know. I mean, the age cliff could be real for all three of those guys. And so you're just hoping that one of them can contribute at any given time. So there is a depth difference here between the Knicks and the 76ers. Both teams will be good, and it's not impossible for the 76ers to overtake the Knicks or whatever. That definitely can happen. Just think with the information we have right now, I would take the 76ers the Knicks over the 76ers.
Hey, Keith, our guy G Mercado came through. Mamadou Ndiaye, maybe? Spot on. That's exactly who it was. Mamadou Ndiaye.
There you go.
From Auburn. Yep. Every time he blocked a shot, nobody packed your lunch like your mama do. This is great.
Love it. Love it. All right. We have one other news story to get into, and it's an injury related one, which is always unfortunate, not what we want to talk about, but there was a question about expansion here that I wanted to get into first, though.
I see it. Is it this one about the Thunder and the Sonics? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Trike 69 says, nice. Hey guys, with the expansion and the Thunder giving the Supersonics their history back, how will team records be affected? Will new Thunder records be set, or do Supersonics records stay with the Thunder? They do not. The Thunder would in effect become a franchise from, and I apologize, I don't know this off the top of my head, whatever their first season was in Oklahoma City. So as it stands right now, I believe Gary Payton is the franchise leader in assists for the combined Sonics Thunder franchise. That would revert to Gary Payton would be the Sonics all-time leader in assists, and Russell Westbrook would be the Thunder all-time leader in assists with that. So that's how that would work out to be. That's where that would land out. So
2008.
2008. Yeah, I knew it was right around there. I knew it was coming in. They also, with the Thunder, they've never hung a banner for the Sonics won the NBA title in 1979. They did not hang that banner in Oklahoma City. It's still actually hanging in Key Arena, where the Sonics used to play, or now I think it's Climate Pledge Arena or something like that. But that banner is still hanging there, and the Sonics would effectively just reassume. So if you look at you go to Basketball Reference and look at like the Hornets franchise page, there's this like big gap in years because they were the Hornets, then nothing, then they reassumed when the Bobcats came in, all as one franchise, and the Pelicans became their own separate thing all out. So that's what they would repeat here.
So, and my understanding, I was just reading something on this the other day, but my understanding is that like the Thunder internally, as you mentioned, they don't recognize the Seattle stuff. Like they don't list Gary Payton as their all-time steals leader or whatever. They list Russell Westbrook. You know, they, and I know you mentioned that. So I think it makes sense for them to do it that way. Everything reverts to the Sonics, and Vlad said going to need a new name for Seattle. No, I'm not doing anything but the Sonics. If I'm Seattle, that would be a disaster to pick anything else other than the Sonics, because why rebuild a brand? It's already a known and recognized brand. There'll be a lot of fanfare for the Sonics coming back, which I think is going to happen. It'll be happening in the next few years. But yeah, if I'm Seattle, I'm not even considering anything else. It's the Sonics, period.
Yep. Yeah, they did a poll, I want to say it was about a year or two ago, when like the expansion stuff really kind of was like, yeah, this is probably happening, where they asked Seattle fans, would you want a new name and a new start? And it was overwhelmingly no way. Like they were like, we are the Supersonics, bring it back. That's what we want again. And I'm all for that. Bring that back. Cool name. Yeah, it's out of date now, but who cares? It doesn't matter. It's fun. Bring me back to Space Needle on the court. Like, I think I've told this story before. I kind of always, as a kid, gravitated to the Sonics as a Western Conference team. I think it was because they wore green.
I was going to say it's the green, huh?
Yeah, there's really no other reason. But they were super fun back in the day with Sean Kemp and Gary Payton, and like they were like the antithesis of a lot of the other Western Conference teams, where like they talked a lot of trash and they were getting in people's faces and they were super brash. And as a teenager, like that's what I gravitated to. And they were so different from the Celtics, who the Celtics talked a lot of trash. I mean, all you got to just Google
Larry
Larry Bird
Bird,
trash talk, and you'll spend an hour watching really funny videos, including one with Xavier McDaniel when he was with the Sonics, where he talks about Bird told him coming out of a timeout, I'm going to catch the ball, I'm going to take it here, I'm going to shoot a shot over you to win it at the buzzer. And he did. And then Bird was cussing, walking off. And McDaniel's like, what's your problem? And he goes, I left 0.2 seconds on the clock because he wanted it to go in with nothing left. So, yeah, man, I love those Sonics. So, yeah, it's got to be the Sonics.
Yep.
You cannot do anything but. Got to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be the Sonics, and that's what they will go with. Keith, I got an interesting question sent to me, and I think I texted it to you yesterday.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer. Maybe you know the answer to this. This is part of the reason why I'm so excited for expansion to eventually hit the NBA, because we're going to hit all these scenarios that are really interesting. So the question that was posed, and I'm just paraphrasing, is when the expansion draft happens, what happens if a player has a no trade clause? And we do have a few players in the NBA right now with no trade clauses. What if an expansion team wants to select Bradley Beal off the Phoenix Suns and he has a no trade clause? What happens?
So this is an outstanding question. Well, while I'm kind of giving you the answer, look it up, whoever it was that asked, if you can, because it's a great question. The answer is no one seems to know. So I got your text. I immediately sent that question off to like 8 different people in the league and a couple people with agencies and a few other folks who just cover the league. It's like 50-50 split on whether or not he could be exposed in an expansion draft, whether or not he would say no, yeah, I'm okay to go to the Vegas team, but not the Seattle team. So I'm gonna utilize my no trade to go there. And then there were some people who were like, no, he gets no say at all. Like it's an
not a
trade draft. It's not a trade. But the consensus was we've not had this before. In the other expansion draft periods, it wasn't a thing, because the handful of guys who had no trade clauses, those guys weren't going to be exposed in an expansion draft. So what everybody said likely would happen is we'd have arbitration, where if it was to come to pass that a guy with a no trade clause was going to be put into an expansion draft, we would likely have some form of arbitration between the league and the NBPA to determine what is the answer here, unless the two sides just came together and figured it out itself. Every once in a while, we get like a weird thing that just isn't covered. In the early days of you and I taught, well, we had been doing shows together, but maybe it was in the early days of Front Office Show. Dennis Schroeder had a bonus thing that came up where he got traded to the Lakers, and it made his bonuses likely versus unlikely, because it was, did the team make the playoffs or not? And he was on a team that didn't. And then it was, there, and that became like a real kind of, contentious point, because so that had to be it didn't get to arbitration. I think the league and the Players Association came to an agreement on that, but yeah, it's going to be I kind of hope it happens, because I always want weird stuff to find out what the answer is. But so for right now, we aren't there. The reality is Bradley Beal's contract with the no trade clause right now will probably be up before we get any kind of expansion draft. And if that happens, then we may not get the answer, because I don't feel fairly confident in another deal for Bradley Beal. He's not getting another no trade clause.
Correct.
I feel pretty good.
But maybe somebody else will or something. Yeah. But this is a question from Edmund Roman. Sent it to me over on Instagram, and I thought it was a fascinating one, because really, when you think about it, the spirit of the no trade clause is to prevent the team from getting rid of the player or from sending the player to another team without the player's permission. And that's essentially what an expansion draft would be, because the team has to decide whether or not to protect the player and all of that. But at the same time, it's also not a trade, it's a draft. So does it apply? Does it not? Is it the spirit of it? Is it the letter of the law? It's a fascinating situation. And so like you said, I kind of hope it comes to pass, just so we can see what does the league do? How do they handle that?
Yeah. I always want weird stuff, if for no other reason to find out, what happens in this situation. So and then it's good, because then we can mark it down and forget all about it. And then the next time it comes up, hopefully remember to look it up and figure it out from there.
All right. Before we get back to our questions, just another news story. Bruce Brown had arthroscopic knee surgery. Looks like, though, he's going to get reevaluated in 3 weeks. As always, that disclaimer, reevaluate does not mean return. But this is not the way that you want to start training camp if you're Bruce Brown, like getting this done right before. That makes me think one of two things here, Keith. Either he had something lingering and then wants to heal up on company time, which that's the classic Shaquille O'Neal
Yeah.
quote. I don't think that's what's going on here. That tells me something must have happened. These guys are playing. They're playing pickup games. They're playing scrimmages and stuff like that at their training facilities and all that. Maybe something happened there. But obviously, with training camp starting up in like a week, he's not going to be reevaluated for 3 weeks. I think this could put the beginning of the season in jeopardy for Bruce Brown here.
Yeah, definitely out for the preseason, I would say. At this point, we're less than a month in terms of weeks, but in days, like we're right there for the season itself to start. So we're in a spot where it is anything like this, because reevaluated is 3 weeks, then we'd be in a spot where it becomes a place with how am I trying to say this? Like, there's always a ramp up period on the back end of that, right? There's always a spot where there is, then several guys or several weeks, maybe sometimes of ramp up. Sometimes it's only a week or two. My guess is what happened with Bruce Brown was in the getting ready for there was probably a hope, hey, let's rest this. Maybe that's all it needs. Then in the ramp up over the last couple weeks to get ready for training camp, it's probably still bugging him. And they're like, all right, we need to go in and do something. This opens the door for guys like Grady Dick. He was already going to be in the mix to start, be part of the rotation. But a guy like Ochai Agbaji to get some extra minutes, maybe Jacoby Walter. He was their first round pick. So I think those guys are all kind of being in a spot where they can benefit from this. They're going to get extra reps throughout camp and preseason. And maybe that'll push into regular season roles for them if they start off the season strong enough. So a little bit of a bummer, but we'll kind of see where it goes from there.
All right, let's get into some of our other questions and whatnot here. Let's go here. Al Farkash said, with players like Ingram and Kuminga not getting the money they think they deserve, could the NBPA push to renegotiate the CBA so teams would pay? I mean, whenever the next out is, I don't know off the top of my head when the next out is on the CBA, then teams can push back and say, well, no, this got we went overboard with this. We need to push back. We need to ease some of the spending restrictions and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They can certainly do that. They can fight that battle at that time. But right now, it's a legal agreement. There's nothing the Players Association can do to get out of it at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's no opt out until there's a mutual opt out years down the line.
Right.
Here. So, yeah, I mean, the reality is there's always going to be some guys who are not going to get paid what they think they should. I mean, that's essentially every player in the league thinks they're not getting paid what they should be paid, including guys who are on max contracts. Or like, why is there a max at all? If they want to give me $100 million, they should be able to give it to me. And the reality is we're going to be there eventually, but we're not there now. So yeah, there's really not much they could do on that. What I think we could see is if teams are in agreement with the NBPA and with agents that we've restricted player movement too much with some of these, there's always a process called it's effectively a renegotiation, but generally in the contract world that I lived in before doing basketball stuff, we called it a side letter agreement, which was basically an amendment to the current collective bargaining agreement that you had, which in that side letter, you would specify, hey, we're changing the terms of this. And that could be something they could do and say, hey, we're going to change the terms of the hard cap restrictions for matching salary dollar for dollar. And that could be something both sides could agree to. But as far as players getting signed, that's just, I mean, that's not really a CBA driven thing. Like this is more of a, that's kind of always been the story. Teams get a little queasy around giving guys max money when they're either injury concerns, they're young, or they have reason to believe their performance is not going to be repeatable for several years.
Well, I think it's fair to say the teams have been more cautious with spending this summer than we've seen in the past. And so maybe that's, part of it. But yeah, but then you look at the past, you say, well, were teams doing what they should do, right? Or should we be in a situation where Brandon Ingram is an easy, here you go, take a max contract because you're this level of player, but then a tier 1 star is also a max contract making the same money as Ingram. Like that part I know never sat well with fans. Somebody always said, well, it's the tier 1 top tier guys that are actually underpaid and all of that, but still teams are more reluctant now to give out those contracts. And that's just the way the new CBA is structured. And maybe that's the way that it should be. As much as like Brandon Ingram may not like it, and some of these other guys may not like that, that doesn't mean it's bad for everybody. There can be ripple effects in other areas. Does this mean that teams are more willing to spend in terms of developing young players? And could that change the career of young talent coming in, right? There's always going to be a domino effect, or are teams more willing to use their mid-level exception because they know they're not going to have to give a guy like Brandon Ingram a max. Instead, they can give him $30 million or something and be okay there. I don't know where his contract will end up, but one of the things that we always talk about, it's unintended consequences that come with every time you change something in the NBA. There's going to be other things that happen as a result. And so that's just always something you have to consider when we're looking at, just change this. Hang on, because if you change that, what else is affected by that? Because oftentimes teams will find every little loophole they can to try to exploit things. And next thing you know, you've accidentally created another issue in another area.
Yeah, I will say this for everybody who's like, I don't know, teams aren't spending. They're not spending. We've had over 380 some odd contracts signed this summer. We have had nearly $7 billion in new money spent in the NBA. Now, of that, like 5.8 million of that, or 5.8 billion of that is fully guaranteed money. So there's still plenty of money being spent. We've had 20 extensions signed, both veteran and rookie scale extensions, many of them max extensions. I know Embiid and Curry's don't necessarily feel like max extensions, but they are. They both extended for the max that they could. It was the max that they could get. Not every contract can be 5 years at the full max. Sometimes in Curry's case, it could only be a year. So we did still have, a ton of money spent, but where I think teams are getting intelligently cautious is, we got to be really smart. We can't lock in on everybody who wants a max, because part of that is there may not be somewhere to move them. And some of that is CBA driven. We teams can't carry $40 million of cap space into the season anymore. That's no longer allowed. So you're not just going to have a place to, I can always move Brandon Ingram to the Spurs if it doesn't work out on a new deal or something like that. So I think we're in a spot where everybody's kind of learning as they go. First year of this stuff is always the most cautious. It is always the, okay, where are we at with this? And then everybody starts to, we've had a year, we've kind of figured it out. We figured out how we're going to play under the new rules, and then things open back up, and the cap's going up. So we're still going to see it, but I think it's rebalanced in a somewhat okay way. I think where I'm a little nervous is I think a lot of teams kept mid-level exceptions and the like open this year because, I want to use it as a trade exception because you can do that now. And I think that kind of flexibility has caused guys like Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, a handful of others to have to take minimum contracts. Lonnie Walker's on a camp deal. Like some of these guys are on these deals that seem like, what are we doing? I think that's where some of the cautiousness is cost, folks.
That's where players are going to be upset is, Keith, when the trade deadline comes and goes, and there's a bunch of those mid-level exceptions that teams said, we want the possibility to use it as a trade exception. They don't use it. That's where your Gary Trent Jr.'s of the world are going to be looking and saying, what are we doing? Like, this money that should be there for us is now not available, and you guys didn't wind up using it on anything.
Agreed.
All right, let's go here. Esham said, where are they now? Allen Houston and Big Country Reeves. So I did a quick check on that. Allen Houston is reportedly, from last I've seen here, a special assistant with the Knicks.
Yep.
And then Big Country Bryant Reeves, he's a cattle farmer in Oklahoma because of course he is.
Yep. His son played at Oklahoma State, I think, where he played. And then I think, if I remember right, he didn't play like a ton there, but I think he ended up going to law school or something like that. So yeah, he's a cattle farmer, and the gym is named after him in his like one stoplight town or something like that. So yeah, Big Country Reeves I love that dude back in the day. Also, you can Google this. Shaq says the guy who was hardest defended him the best of anybody in the history of the NBA was Big Country Reeves. He's like, I couldn't do anything with him. I couldn't move him.
Wow.
He's like, he was the one guy I could not do anything with. He says the guy who was hardest for him to defend was Tim Duncan. Because he's like, you could talk all the trash you wanted to him, and then he'd just turn around, bank a shot in your face, and run down the other end of the floor.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, you just couldn't get him off
robot.
the screen. No, he's not in Vancouver, Sam. He's in Oklahoma.
He's in Oklahoma.
He was, the minute his career ended, he was right back in Oklahoma.
All right, let's go here. Why is there an expansion draft? Just get free agents, top draft picks, and rebuild from the bottom. It's more fair to than taking players from teams. So why do it this way? Like, expansion teams are going to be bad already, but if essentially you're just getting free agents and then picking guys in the draft, and the free agents that are going to be available to you are not going to be very numerous, you're essentially talking about a G League team, right? That's probably what the way this is going to wind up. It's going to wind up being the quality of like a G League team. And while it's not like MLS, a new team comes in and they're given certain advantages that can allow them to really hit the ground running. Sometimes they wind up being a really, really good team immediately. The NBA certainly doesn't have a system like that. These expansion teams are bad. Their salary cap is restricted, is limited, but there's limits to it. You don't want a team entering a market and being so bad that they win like 6 games on the season or something like that. So that's part of it. You want to make sure that there are some recognizable names coming in, and so that's why you're taking established NBA talent from other cities. Also, teams have the ability to protect players as well. I believe they can protect 8 players, and we'll see if they shift those rules at all in the coming years when we get expansion actually happening. But teams have the ability to protect players on their roster, and if a team has a lot of free agents, it could be that they don't really have anybody that a team could take because they're able to protect up to 8 players, and then free agents are not eligible to be
We
selected.
do have to expose at least one player under previous rules.
Is it one?
Yeah, so if you only had 6 guys under contract, you still had to put one player. It may make at least one player available. So
if you do that, so then you could take a team like, let's say you're the Suns, and let's say Bradley Beal is still on a max contract. You could save everybody, protect everybody except for Bradley Beal, because nobody's going to take that contract.
Yep.
That there's a strategy to this, but bottom line, you don't want an expansion team to come in. They're going to be bad. You don't want them to be so bad that the local fans aren't excited and don't care and aren't interested. Yep. And there's no names and you want there to be, and for the league, not just that city, but for the league, you want that team to come in, sell a bunch of jerseys, make some revenue, all of that sort of stuff, because now they're getting that share of the overall pie for the NBA. You want them producing and contributing to that too.
Yeah, so let's do this just real quick, just because I've seen a couple other questions about it. So one of the deals with expansion, like we said, and we're going off of what happened in the past 2 rounds of expansion, because that's all we can go off of right now, because we don't know. They may change things up. Yep. But so in this world, it is 8 players that you can protect. So that means everybody else needs to be made exposed in the expansion draft. Restricted free agents can be protected, but if they are selected, they immediately become an unrestricted free agent. And then the team that selected them inherits whatever their level of bird rights would be. Mm-hmm. The other part with the expansion teams is, in the past, they've operated under an 80% of the cap amount for the first year. Then it goes up to 90% the second year, and then up to the full 100% in the third year. So let's just say we're at a $200 million cap the first year for an expansion team. They'd be sitting at $160 million cap. So it's not even like if it was like, oh, it's Las Vegas and these 4 superstars all want to go there, sign them all to max deals. You wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't have the cap space to pull it off. You could maybe get 1 or 2 of them, but you wouldn't be able to do the rest. If you take a player in the expansion draft, the expansion team can waive that player. Their salary does not count towards the cap after they've been selected in an expansion draft. So it's like almost like a modified version of an amnesty clause. So let's use Bradley Beal as an example. Let's say Bradley Beal is let's just say he can't play anymore, right? Let's just say he can't live up to his contract. He's way overpaid. And what the Suns could do is say, hey, rather than us lose Ryan Dunn or Oso Iguodala, who we really like, we don't want to lose them in an expansion draft. Will you take Bradley Beal off our hands? We'll give you a first round pick to take him. Then you take him, comes off the Suns books, and then expansion Las Vegas team can say, cool, we waive him, and now he's not on our books. Still gets paid. He still gets his money, and his salary, this is the crucial part, still counts towards the salary floor for the expansion team. It just doesn't count on their books anymore. So you're kind of like, free, right? We still got to pay the guy, but free cap space by moving him off for two teams. And that's how, so that's where expansion is going to get really fun, because you're going to see there's what's always happened in these things is combinations of take a guy and we'll pay you to do it, or take this guy instead of one of our good young players that we had to expose because we ran out of protected spots. We'll give you a second or sometimes even a first if you'll take this other guy instead. Because once you lose a player in an expansion draft, everybody, you're off. You're off the hook. You can't lose multiple players. Once a player's been picked from your team, you're out of the mix there. And then draft pick wise, they've done different things with different rounds of expansion, where it's always been in the first year. They've restricted them to not being in whatever the lottery picks are, meaning whatever picks are won by the lottery. So right now that'd be pick 5. So it would be, you're going to pick at pick 5. And if teams jump you, they jump you, and it is what it is. But this team will get locked in at pick 5. And let's say it's again Seattle and Las Vegas. They usually, when they had the Raptors and the Grizzlies, they hosted a coin flip, and one of the two, I don't remember off the top of my head, whoever won said we'd rather pick higher in the NBA draft. Then the other team got the first pick in the expansion draft. Right. And it's not a snake draft. It's just straight back and forth. It's not like a fantasy snake draft or anything. So those are some of the rules. We'll see what they tweak and change, because it'll be over 20 years by the time we get there for new teams.
I did not realize the thing that you said about the expansion team being able to pick a player and then waive the player and have that player come off their books. That's incredibly powerful. And that's something I think teams would be willing to pay. Now, teams are being more careful with the contracts they're giving out, but a few years from now, maybe there are some bad contracts sitting there, particularly like a player has an injury or something like that, and they're just not the same player anymore. And you could see some teams maybe being willing to pay to use that effectively an amnesty situation. That could get really interesting. And this is part of why we're excited about expansion and everything, because it's going to add so many wrinkles and so much strategy to that offseason. All right.
Our guy here, young, motivated millionaires, or millionaire-s, I don't know. Maybe it's a female viewer, which we found out in her comments. We have several of, which is great. Welcome. Happy to have you here. To his point, though, of like just kind of almost start from scratch. That's kind of what the Bobcats did. The Bobcats really focused in their expansion draft on drafting guys who were restricted free agents, because then they became free agents and they came off their books that way. And then they only picked a handful of guys in the expansion draft that they were going to say, all right, let's go. Let's bring those guys into our first year team.
Gerald Wallace, Crash. Let's go.
He was the big one.
He was the big one. All right. Miguel, would you do this deal? The Lakers get Levine, Kessler, Toriko. Oh, my goodness. I mean, the answer is no, but without reading this whole thing, the answer is no, just because it's too long. There's too many players involved. This would have to be a crazy trade deadline deal. But basically, it's D'Lo, Rui, Gabe, JHS, Jackson. It's basically all the Lakers guys, the picks, all that kind of stuff going out for Zach LaVine and Walker Kessler. I don't think any team wants to give up anything to get Zach LaVine right now. Wants to give up assets. I mean, you can talk about Kessler and all of that, but just in general, without breaking down like this guy's worth this and that guy's worth that or whatever. I think teams aren't looking to give away anything in order to get Zach LaVine at the moment. Maybe that changes when he steps on the floor, but that seems to be where things are at right now.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is this is a lot of value going to the Lakers and not a lot of value going anywhere. I mean, the Bulls aren't even getting anything. I mean, they're getting off of Levine's contract.
Well,
I get
yeah. I
that,
mean, I wouldn't expect the Bulls to get
yeah,
anything for Levine.
yeah. I mean, maybe you could route one of those first there because I don't know that Utah needs to get 2 firsts in this
For
for
Kessler.
Kessler. And then I mean, part of his starting lineup is Vando. We don't even know when he's going to play. So
Right.
yeah,
Right. We're waiting on an update for him.
2-team trades are hard enough. We don't need to get into 3. Like then it gets tricky. Hey,
yeah.
here we go. Jovian Morales, like spike.
Right.
Let's go.
Hit that like. Hit
it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm really fascinated to see how the Zach LaVine trade market plays out. Maybe he gets back on the floor and he's great.
Yeah.
And teams start going, okay, maybe this contract's not so bad. But until
sure
that
what
point,
the Bulls are hoping for.
Yeah, that's what the Bulls are certainly hoping for. But until that point, I just, I don't see teams. Look, if any team was willing to give up positive value for Zach LaVine, he'd be on another team right now.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. Yeah, it'd already be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't even need to be that much of positive value.
Ryan said D'Lo is good and an expiring contract, high trade value. Again, if D'Lo had high trade value, same thing with Zach LaVine, he would be traded already.
Yeah.
But part of the problem is he's a point guard, and he may bristle at the term point guard, but that's what teams see him as, right? As a point guard. But teams don't need a point guard. Most teams already have their point guard situation, or at least that want to have their point guard situation settled. They've already got that settled. Yes, he is a big expiring contract, but there's also a situation where if you're a team that already has a point guard in place and you're going to go trade for D'Angelo Russell, you're probably just trading for him as an expiring contract. The Lakers aren't going to value him that way because he was really good for them last season. Obviously not necessarily in the postseason, but during the season, he was very, very good for them and a big part of why they made the postseason. So other teams are going to value him as an expiring deal. The Lakers are going to value him as a starter for us that put up 18 and 6 last season, right? You're going to have that imbalance, and that's going to make it difficult to find a trade until, maybe the dynamic changes or whatever as we get closer to the trade deadline. But that's an issue on the trade front right now.
Yeah, I think with D'Lo, he doesn't stink. I mean, people like to throw that out there that he's not good at all. I think he also has a kind of unique value to the Lakers in that if LeBron and AD are out, D'Angelo Russell's a guy. I mean, I watched him be a part of it firsthand when they won in Boston without LeBron and AD, where he had if I remember right, I think he had a pretty good night there. So yeah, I mean, there's, he's a guy who can go for 40 on any given night and almost win you a game. But if other guys are out, and that's important to have those kind of guys when you have a couple veterans who they're going to miss some time. They're going to miss games here and there. So yeah, that's the tough thing. If he goes in a trade, it's going to be as part of a bigger trade. Something, I'm not saying it'll be Levine, but something like a Levine trade where it's the Lakers have to put together multiple salaries to go find, this kind of guy. So that's where that could go.
All right, let's finish things up here. Doug, not Dave McMenamin, said back from hiatus. Missed you guys. Go Pistons. Welcome in,
thanks, man.
Doug. Happy to have you back. That's what I talked about this a little bit last night when I was recording the Lakers Nation podcast for today. That this is the time of year when fans start filtering back in towards the NBA. We've got the diehards, right? That are, and not saying that anybody is or isn't a diehard or whatever, but you've got the people that are, it's August 15th. And it's been a week since anything, or 2 weeks since there's been any NBA news, and they're still, talking about it and going through all the teams and all that kind of stuff. And then there's other people that you get distracted by MLB for a little while, you get distracted by NFL for a little while, and then you start coming back around to NBA around this time of year. And so we're going to see more and more people coming back in because, 'tis the season, and it always feels good because we know as the weather starts changing, starts getting a little bit cooler, also means the NBA is coming back. And I love this time of year. I think August and September, maybe I'm biased, but they're my least favorite months of the year. and I can't wait for everything to change, the weather to start changing. Because by this point, I'm kind of done with the heat. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to get into the cooler weather and all that. And then plus we get NBA basketball coming back. Oh, this is one of my favorite times of the year, and I can't wait. We're a couple of weeks away from preseason starting up. Let's go.
Yeah, it just I have nothing to add beyond that. People are saying I saw a D'Lo Suggs Lakers Magic trade rumor on X. Yeah, not from anybody credible. You didn't.
No.
The only way I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. The only way the Magic consider that is if the Lakers give both first round picks too, because they have no interest in D'Angelo Russell.
No.
If they did, they'd have him.
And Suggs is fantastic.
Yeah. Suggs is really, really good. So there's no chance that's going to be a thing unless the Lakers were to give both first round picks. That's Suggs is just younger and quite frankly a better player because he's very scalable for all kinds of teams. Right, you plug him into just about anywhere and he's going to be just fine. I'm on a team with that. So, and then we had a couple questions about Agatha all along. We talked about it briefly. I have not had a chance to watch the second episode yet. I was busy all day yesterday. I was doing a lot of writing. I've got a lot of stuff coming down. It's the start of the season, man. I'm fired up. I was buried in writing and rewatching stuff. Suggs is 100% better than D'Angelo Russell. Stop. Like full stop. So yeah, come on, guys. What are we doing? But yeah, I was this is funny. Whoops. Well, see, that's not funny. That's just smart.
Mm-hmm.
Stop moving on me.
There we go.
There it is. We will all be led astray without Woj. I'm seeing some people kind of, with a little bit of that, but just trust the people you've always trusted.
Yeah.
Woj retiring doesn't mean random Joe with 70 followers is now the new insider.
No,
like that's not how it works. Trust the people you trust. Like Ramona was all over the Embiid stuff today. Chums, I don't even know if Chums had it first. Because where I saw it first was somebody shared Embiid's Instagram post. So I think Embiid broke it himself.
Embiid had it first.
Yeah, but then Shams had it. Then Ramona was right behind him like a minute later with details. And I think she had a couple extra details. So, it's going to be Ramona. It's going to be Brian Windhorst. You're going to see Chris Haynes jump back in there. Shams will get presumably anything that Woj would have gotten. Anyway, Mike Scotto's been killing it on Twitter with camp signings and two-way signings and stuff. So just trust the people you trust. We don't need to jump all over a bunch of people who are not there. People who you never heard of before yesterday. We don't need to go there. So
well, and I think part of it too is there's people out there, they make it difficult to distinguish what's a real trade and what's not, what's fake and what's real and all that. And you get people who aren't necessarily as tuned in to the NBA, see something from an account, it looks real, and then next thing you know, they're sharing it and things can, they can suddenly take on a life of their own. So you just got to be careful with stuff like that. I don't think you're not suddenly going to get random X account is the new insider to assume the power that was vacated by Woj or something like that. I don't think that's going to happen. Just continue to trust the people that we've always trusted and that tend to get things right, and go from there.
Yep. Yeah, without a doubt. There's guys, other questions came in, but we got to kill it. I got to go. Hey, we got to go. Oh yeah, we'll take this one. Whoops. Just want to close it. Woj was holding Windhorst back. Windhorst breakout season coming. I saw that same report. I don't know, right? I wasn't there. Windhorst has always had good stuff. If you listen to the Hoop Collective, as much as he likes to say, don't aggregate this, he drops good nuggets in there almost all the time. And it's it's for me, that's like the equivalent of you got to read everything Zach Lowe writes, because he's going to tuck somewhere in a paragraph where he's like, who's been playing good for this team? Player X, who also drew some trade interest from teams A, B, and C, last month. And then it's like, whoa, wait, what? Like, it's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the guy's pick and roll defense, but he just drops it in there. It's like there, and you got to kind of do that with Windy too. So, it's I mean, he does a great job with that. Good call out from Miguel on this. I saw that story too. I don't remember who it was from, but yeah, I mean, maybe my guess is what you're going to see is some people who might have gone to Woj with, hey, I have this part of a story, like part of a rumor or a news thing. And then Woj would go get the rest of it. Maybe they run and go get the rest of it themselves now. We'll see. It's all going to come here in the next, several weeks. I guess good news is there's not a lot transactionally happening right now.
Yeah.
It's the smaller level stuff about filling out rosters, camp signings, and the like. So it'll really be the big chunk for coming into the trade deadline. Like that's when we'll find out who like the new
and things will settle.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So with that, but yeah. So yeah, but like I was in the middle of saying before Miguel brought this up very astutely was I gotta go. We gotta drop our dogs off. We gotta run on.
He's hitting the road.
Do some stuff. Hitting the road for the weekend for a little bit. So we got some stuff going on. But yeah, we appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. Another fun Friday. Dude, that's right. Next Friday when we do this, we'll be a week out. 1 week out from preseason. Then the next Friday, we're gonna have to figure out how we work around it. Because we got Celtics Nuggets tipping off at noon. So we might have to do it early.
Or we do it during the game and we talk about the game while it's on.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll do that. We'll see. Who knows? We'll figure that out. We got 2 weeks. We got 2 weeks to figure it out.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on Front Office Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.